Back in the day, another year in gaming usually just meant there was another Madden around the corner. Nowadays, though, it seems like every major gaming franchise has a yearly iteration. Halo's been doing it for a while, Dragon Age is doing it, Mass Effect is starting to do it, Assassin's Creed, and Guitar Hero did it until it murdered its own franchise with it. Of course, the big gaming franchise that does this is Call of Duty, and this year's iteration, Black Ops 2, has just came out recently. I don't feel as though I need to explain to you what Call of Duty is or how it works in any kind of major detail, seeing as it's currently the most popular console game at the moment. I should mention though that I am not a Call of Duty player. I played a few hours of it in my lifetime, a little bit of Black Ops, a little bit of Modern Warfare 3, and of course a little bit of Black Ops 2 for this review. But understand this is coming from the perspective of someone who is not a big Call of Duty player. The single player in Call of Duty games are the least important part of the whole package, but it's here, so I gotta talk about it. It's a everyday run-of-the-mill, average, linear, cinematic, point A to point B first-person shooter. Basically any first-person shooter made in the last 6 years, with one exception that I'll get to in a bit. The game tries to impress you with a photorealistic depiction of modern war, and it tries to shock you by showing iconic landscapes and cities ravaged by this war. This was all originally new and it worked at some point, but after all these years of Call of Duty iterations and the countless number of copycat games trying to replicate Call of Duty's success, it just ends up being boring because you've seen it all before. Black Ops 2 tries to mix up the overdone Modern Warfare setting by also having parts of the game that take place in the 1980s. The one thing that separates this from most modern first-person shooter campaigns is there's also segments where you can change the game's story through small actions in the regular stages, or through separate missions where you have one chance to complete them or else you'll die. Some of these special missions take place from a strategy RTS point of view, but the soldier AI is so stupid that it doesn't really work. In the end though, branching stories in video games aren't new, so this doesn't matter, just like the single player doesn't matter. Multiplayer is what people buy this game over and over, year after year again for. You got a big heaping handful of different modes in the multiplayer. You've got deathmatch, team modes, various party games like gun game, area secural. There's a lot of game modes in the multiplayer. As expected from the franchise, the multiplayer allows a lot of customization options. You can create your own classes and you can pick guns, attachments, perks, grenades, etc. Black Ops 2 mixes things up by making it so you don't actually have to have one choice in every possible option. In fact, most of the time that's impossible. You get 10 points to distribute into a custom class. 1 point for each weapon, attachment, perk. What this means is if you wanted to get more perks and sacrifice, say, a grenade or a few weapon attachments, that's fine. You can even sacrifice all your weapons and just run into the game with nothing but your knife. I kinda like this twist on the character customization. It allows a lot more fun and freedom in the multiplayer. As you play the multiplayer, you level up both your character and your weapon. As your weapon levels up, you unlock new attachments, laser sights, grips, whatever. As your character progresses, you earn these unlock tokens, which let you unlock new guns, new perks, basically everything that you can unlock. While you're in a match, you earn points towards airstrikes. You can get planes to come in and ping players, you can get unmanned vehicles to come in, you can even get bombs dropped on other players. No! My car! This leveling system is actually the big draw to Call of Duty. Now, most Call of Duty hardcore players won't be able to explain to you in any coherent way why they like the game so much, but the reason it pulls people in is because of the leveling system. It acts like a treadmill. It's the same thing that pulls people into World of Warcraft that's pulling people into Call of Duty. In World of Warcraft, you level up and raid dungeons to get more gear so that you can raid these dungeons better to get more gear easier and level up. In Call of Duty, you're leveling up to unlock more weapons so you can eventually prestige, reset your level stats, and do it again and again, making yourself look like a better player. Now, on the publisher's part, having your developers keep this system in the game is genius. Having an yearly iterative game and being able to sell it to people who are pretty much more or less addicted to it is an insane way to just print money. However, I'm not completely sold on the idea of leveling in a first-person shooter. Traditionally, first-person shooters have always put every player on an even ground. If you think back to classics like Doom, Quake, Unreal, every character was even, and you got advantage by finding weapons in the map and maintaining control of areas of the map that had these weapons. In games like Call of Duty, you get advantage by playing a lot. Not necessarily playing well, but just by playing a lot. You level up and you unlock weapons that are arguably better than the weapons you have available to you at the start. Now, most of the weapons in the game, the guns I mean, are all really kind of samey. They're just generic guns that shoot bullets really fast. But I can tell you for sure there are some perks that do feel a little tipsy on the balance side, and a few special weapons as well. There's perks that can hide you from the radar, perks that can make vision impairing grenades and effects not really hurt you as much, perks that let you see structures like turrets through walls. There's some special weapons like riot shields which will confuse the heck out of your average player. And the people getting these arguably unbalanced weapons are the people who are playing the game a lot. So if you have a new player coming into the game, they aren't going to really have as much fun as someone who's been sitting there playing the game endlessly. So while this leveling system may be the big draw to the game, and it may be what's holding the billions of fans onto it, whether they realize it or not, in the end, it's kind of detrimental to the gameplay in a way. Moving away from the leveling aspect, the gameplay does have a few more issues I should tell you about. Returning from the first Black Ops game is this technique known as dolphin diving, where from either in the air or from whenever you just slam on the prone button and your character belly flops to the ground. When you're down there, you take a few shots at your enemy, hopefully killing them. Now when I explain it, it doesn't sound that bad, but in practice, this technique sucks. Your enemy will come at you, you'll have a good shot at them, you start firing, but he just hits the ground, effectively shrinking his hitbox down flat onto the floor, and chances are dodging every bullet you shot at him. This is a technique that originated from Battlefield and has only really been around during these warfare kind of first-person shooters, so for someone coming into the game, not really being into these kind of games, it's a major hurdle to get over. The fact that someone can just train themselves to do this absurd tactic and suddenly they get this huge advantage over other people, it's kind of stupid. It's really cheap and I just don't like it. It wasn't even in Modern Warfare 3, so somebody thought that it wasn't that great, just not the people who made Black Ops 2. The airstrikes in this game range from vital to gameplay, extremely fun, all the way to unbalanced and probably shouldn't be in the game at all. On the fun side, you get remote-controlled vehicles like little RC cars you can use as remote-controlled bombs, or Dragonfire drones which you can fly around the map shooting at people. If someone finds your player while you're controlling these remote-controlled vehicles, they can blow the shit out of you and put you to an end. On the useful side, you have UAVs, which are unmanned vehicles who fly over the map, pinging enemies on your radar so you can find them. And as for the completely out-of-place unnecessary, you have bombs, missiles, even nukes that can be dropped onto the map from the sky. Usually, these kind of attacks from the sky are almost completely unavoidable. Sometimes, if you happen to be near a building, you can duck inside of there and hopefully avoid it, but most of the time, there's just no way to avoid these. Worst off is the people who get to use these are the people who are already doing well in the game. So you're awarded for doing well by being allowed to use unavoidable mass destruction attacks, whereas people who are struggling don't get any aid at all. This is extremely unbalanced. I feel like these airstrikes with the missiles and bombs and nukes, those don't belong in the game at all. The game would be a lot better without those. Black Ops 2 doesn't have any player-owned dedicated servers, and personally, I don't think the Modern Warfare series needs those. A lot of admins on these kind of servers have stupid rules like no hard scoping, only quick scoping, or they'll ban random weapons and perks for very little reason, and in the end, the majority of the players just want to level up and kill people, so matchmaking in the end is perfect for this series. The netcode in Black Ops 2, however, can be very janky. Oftentimes, you'll find yourself shooting at an enemy, you can see your muzzle flash going off, you can hear your gun shooting, you see the bullets going towards them, and you think you hear them hitting them. But then suddenly they'll shoot you and you'll die, and when you're looking at their kill cam, you'll see that either didn't actually shoot that last wave of bullets, or you did shoot them but you were aiming way up above their heads. This is a sign of really bad lag compensation. Now, other first-person shooters I've been playing, usually on the Unreal Engine or the Source Engine, I've never really felt like I've had these kind of netcode bullshit moments to the same extent. But on the Modern Warfare engine, which if you didn't know, is actually a heavily modified version of the Quake 3 Arena engine, this kind of problem happens a lot, and it's gonna frustrate me a lot. To be fair though, for every bullshit kill someone gets on you, chances are you're gonna get a bullshit kill on someone else. And if you're like me, you're gonna feel terrible about it because getting legit kills just feels so much better. The sounds in Black Ops 2 are all average. Guns sound powerful, and there's plenty of background noises that make you really feel like you're in a war zone. Music cues in the single player really fit the action happening on screen, and in the end, there's really not much to complain about with the sounds. Black Ops 2's graphics are something that definitely needs to be addressed. For starters, the game runs at 60 FPS, and that is great. It even runs at 60 FPS on the Xbox. Now, it's important to have a high FPS in these Twitch first-person shooters because one, a low FPS, even in other kind of games, can cause certain people, including me, to kind of get some motion sickness. Also, the higher FPS allows for more reaction time, but in order to both have this high FPS and to maintain a realistic as possible graphics style, a lot of concessions have to be made. When you're moving, or you're going through the single player, or looking at things from far away, things look fine. But as soon as you stop and look at things close up, you start to see that this generation of consoles is really at its end. Textures are blurry, stretched out, details are very low poly, and there's only so many shaders you can throw at these things before they just stop working. Now, I understand that when you have this 60 FPS goal, you have to make sacrifices, but if you had also decided to forego your faux realism style, and instead stylize the game in a way that works with the Xbox 360's graphical limitations, you could probably have a game that looks a lot better. It doesn't necessarily have to look cartoony or comic-y, but I imagine if you had an artist who was into the whole modern war gritty thing, they could probably come up with a cool style that would fit this and allow you to keep your 60 FPS without the game looking a little shitty when you come to a stop. The faux realism graphic style gives the game a really bland and boring appearance. Especially when you're running through stages made of mostly rubble, you get this just generic brown and gray palette over everything, and it's just not really interesting to look at. On top of this, the style actually hurts gameplay in a way. It's really almost impossible to tell what kind of weapon an enemy is holding because they're all just same looking generic blackish gray grayish, realistic guns. If you didn't have a green name over teammates and no name over your enemies, it would also be impossible to differentiate between the two teams. Grenades and landmines are almost impossible to see half the time because they're the same color as the ground, brown. And I guess that helps whoever put it down, but sometimes you just can't flat out tell the difference between a mine and a piece of rubble. If the game would forego its faux realism, get a graphic style that helps the game play out, a graphic style that lets you differentiate between teams, know what weapon an enemy is holding just at a quick glance, have stages that become iconic because of their appearance, then I feel like the game could benefit a lot from this. There's not a lot of stages included in the game, and some of them are a lot worse than others. Stages like the tiny cruise ship and this confusingly laid out train station are really not fun to play on. Other slightly larger stages sometimes have really big open areas in the center, which are basically death traps for anyone who goes through them. I feel like the game could have benefited from having more variety in the stages, but when your theme is modern war, there's not much you can do there. On the plus side, the worst stage of all, Nuketown, is only available if you pre-ordered the game's special edition, so fortunately anyone who gives a shit about that terrible grindfest will just be off in their own isolated playlist away from the rest of the players, which is a big plus. Now, of course, the reason the game only has 13 stages is because of Activision's usual plan to sell you additional stages in map packs after the game's release. As Modern Warfare 3 and Black Ops have shown us, typically what they do is they sell you 4 map packs, each with about 4 or 5 maps each for about $15 each. That's not really a good deal there. Like, that's around $2.50 per map, and I really don't like the idea of selling so many map packs to begin with, because what it ends up doing is it segments the player base into people who bought the map packs and the people who didn't. So in the end, you kind of have to put down the money if you want to play with the same amount of people you've been playing before, which is really Activision's whole plan to begin with. They want you to buy their game every year, because if you don't, you're stuck playing the older game, which isn't going to have as many people as the new one does. In the end, their plan of selling you these map packs and this full price game every year, if you do the math, you're almost paying as much as the average World of Warcraft player does every year. Okay, you're getting a little bit of a better deal, but still. Hey gamers, get banned for sexism and change your recently hacked password. It's time to talk about the PC port of the game! Thankfully, the PC port of Black Ops 2 is a lot better than the PC port of Modern Warfare 3. In Modern Warfare 3, the game rendered at the tiny little 360 resolution and upscaled it to whatever resolution you picked unless you changed a certain option. On top of this, even worse than this, is that the game didn't let you change the FOV. It was stuck at the terribly microscopic console 65 degrees. This is bad because a lot of people, including myself, get motion sickness when you try to play a game at such a small FOV. Fortunately, Black Ops 2 fixes these things. It by default renders at a proper full PC resolution, and it lets you change the FOV. It only lets you change the FOV to 80. I would prefer 90. 90 is kind of the sweet spot, but 80 is enough that I don't get motion sickness, so that's a good plus. They separated the executables for the single player, multiplayer, and zombies, so if you only want to play the multiplayer, you can get rid of the single player and you won't take up so much space. If you wanted to have it all installed though, I think if it was all one thing, it would take up less room because you could share resources, but I guess this isn't really a big deal since in the end, people are going to be playing multiplayer more than anything. The PC version also gets rid of matches hosted by players, which, had the whole thing with the host having an advantage and then the problem of host migration if he leaves. Instead, it all takes place on dedicated Black Ops 2 servers. Overall, the PC port of Black Ops 2 is very competent, and I don't really have any problems with it. Overall, Black Ops 2 is just a basic incremental change on the game. The differences between this and Modern Warfare 3 and the first Black Ops are extremely minimal, and if you showed me videos of the 3 games side by side, I wouldn't be able to tell you which was which. This game, much like the rest of the Call of Duty series, is a very average game. There's nothing special about it, it's a bit bland and generic, it's average as heck. If you like Call of Duty games, you're not watching this video. You're already playing the game because you've already bought it and you don't watch game reviews. But if you are watching this video, chances are you don't like Call of Duty or you've never played it. If you don't like Call of Duty, this game isn't going to change your mind, don't bother with it at all. If you've never played Call of Duty, I recommend going to a friend's house and giving it a shot. Personally, this might be a game I play every once in a while because when the gunplay does work, it's fun enough, and I already own it since I had to buy it to review it, but I'm definitely not buying next year's Call of Duty. When it comes out, just watch this review and pretend I'm reviewing the new one.